What's up, Taiwan? I'm Joyce with news from here in Taiwan and around the world. Large-scale air raid drills have just been held across Taipei. They're designed to make sure people know what to do if the city comes under attack from the air. Rick Lauert is at a school in central Taipei that's doubling up as an air raid shelter. Rick, tell us, how did the drills go?
So the siren you're hearing now, that marks the end of the air defense drill here at an elementary school in the capital Taipei. It's been acting as a disaster response center. Here they've been setting up areas where people could sleep, where people can find food and medical attention. And in one of the underground classrooms, there's an air raid shelter where people could shelter from an attack from above. It's all part of the annual Wan-An drills, which today have brought much of northern Taiwan to a standstill. On hearing the siren and getting a notification on your phone, millions of people across northern Taiwan have had to stop what they're doing and seek shelter. If you're driving your car, you have to pull over safely at the side of the road and go inside. If you're on the street, you have to find a place to hide. And the emergency services, the police and firemen, have been directing people to the thousands of air raid shelters that are around the city. And the city's mayor, Jiang Wanan, he's just been here at this disaster response center. He's been overseeing what sort of preparations his city is putting in place to respond to an air raid. So why is all of this happening? Well, of course, it's in response to China, which claims Taiwan as part of its territory and has been upping its threats to take the country by force. Taiwan, of course, has been upping its defense spending, its lengthened conscription, all to face that China threat. And also it's been doing more of exercises like this to prepare the country for the possibility of war.
Thanks, Rick, for that update. That was Rick Lauert reporting live from Taipei. We'll be bringing you more on these drills later. Another part of these annual military exercises has ground to a halt as a typhoon threatens to hit the east coast. Jaime Ocon is with the military in Hualien with this update.
Taiwan's military has been practicing how to reposition some of its aircraft to bases around the country, but drills scheduled for today have been canceled due to an incoming typhoon. This week, the country's holding its largest military drills, the Hanguang exercise, which aim to test Taiwan's ability to defend against a Chinese invasion. For the past few days, fighter jets, cargo planes, and other military aircraft have been flying all around Taiwan, simulating a wartime scenario. Many flying to air bases in the east, such as Jiasan Air Base in Hualien, farther away from a potential front line. Taiwan is no stranger to typhoons and strong rain, especially during the summer, and military officials say drills scheduled for later this week will be affected.
东部地区受到台风的影响是比较明显，所以有一些海空的科目啊，我们也会配合整个台风的状况来去做一些调整。
The drills were supposed to rehearse how to protect Taiwan's military resources, as the country's military is much smaller than China's. That's why a big portion of this year's Hanguang exercise focuses on how to defend critical infrastructure like air bases and ports. Officials here say that the typhoon just goes to show that even with the most preparation, things don't always go to plan. But the military plans to use the storm to practice how to react to unexpected situations. Ryan Wu and Jaime Ocon in Hualien County for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan has issued a land warning for Typhoon Gaemi as local authorities prepare for strong winds and heavy rains. The storm is expected to make landfall on the east coast early Wednesday morning. The Central Weather Administration is warning of torrential rains, dangerous winds, and waves of up to 3 meters. The Railways Administration is increasing CCTV monitoring of the tracks in areas vulnerable to landslides. Fishing boats are being moved back to harbor for safety, while parks and hiking trails have been closed. Donations and key endorsements are pouring in for U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris's campaign for the White House. That's after sitting President Joe Biden dropped out of the race, endorsing Harris instead to take on the Republican pick, Donald Trump. Vice President Kamala Harris addresses the Democratic Party for the first time as a presidential hopeful, stepping in after incumbent President Joe Biden withdrew his bid for re-election, amid pressure from party members disappointed in his debate performance and worried about his mental acuity and ailing health.
In the days and weeks ahead, I, together with you, will do everything in my power to unite our Democratic Party, to unite our nation, and to win this election.
Biden, who is still recovering from COVID at home, listened in by phone, vowing to campaign alongside the former California Attorney General.
I'm watching you, kid. I'm watching you, kid. I love you.
I love you, Joe.
Campaign sources say Harris, the daughter of Indian and Jamaican immigrants, has enough support from Democratic delegates to win the party's nomination. In the first 24 hours since Biden dropped out, the vice president has raised $81 million for her campaign, the most ever in a single day for either party this cycle. And with key endorsements from top Democrats like former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, Harris is pulling further ahead of other potential contenders.
Everybody who might have been a formidable challenger to her has now endorsed her. Just over the last few hours this morning. So it's hard to see that there's anyone who would really contest it.
Meanwhile, in his first solo rally in Ohio, Republican vice presidential nominee J.D. Vance slammed Harris and other Democrats, saying they, quote, lied about Biden's mental capacity to serve as president.
Every single person who saw Joe Biden knew that he wasn't capable of doing the job, and for 3 years they said nothing until he became political dead weight.
Vance's comments shed light on the Republican Party's shifting strategy, pinning the responsibility for what they see as Biden's failed policies equally on Harris's shoulders, on top of targeting her individual record. But Harris is pushing forward, contrasting her experience as a prosecutor with Donald Trump's as a convicted felon. But with the Republican nominee having a head start in the presidential race, Harris has her work cut out for her. She may have her party on side now, but she has less than 4 months to go to convince American voters that she's the right person to lead the country. Devin Tsai and Joyce Tseng for TaiwanPlus. The head of the U.S. Secret Service says her agency failed to properly protect former President Donald Trump from an assassination attempt.
The assassination attempt of former President Donald Trump on July 13th is the most significant operational failure of the Secret Service in decades, and I am keeping him and his family in my thoughts.
Kimberly Cheadle was reporting to Congress on the shooting. The shooter, identified as 20-year-old Thomas Matthew Crooks, was killed after firing at Trump, injuring his right ear and killing a bystander. Cheadle says her agency had heard several reports of a man with a rifle on a rooftop before the shooting. Secret Service also labeled the rooftop where Crooks fired from as a vulnerable spot days before. Bipartisan lawmakers have called for Cheadle to resign. She has resisted the calls, saying she is the right person to lead the agency. In Taiwan, 3 kindergarten teachers are facing punishment over a child abuse scandal. As John Ventrias reports, it's the latest in a string of such cases in recent months.
你用2只手拉他双脚，他跌倒，他90公分的高度拉上，他直接摔下去。那如果出什么事呢？你能承担吗？
Angry parents confront staff at their children's kindergarten over what they say is a pattern of abuse and humiliation. They suspect 8 children suffered physical violence or inappropriate treatment at this new Taipei school. Those stories of abuse go back to 2022, meaning there may be more. While only 3 parents are suing so far, several have traumatic testimony.
我的小朋友在午休的时间就是有尿湿裤子，有被老师就是当众就是叫其他的学生就是将他围一圈，把他的裤子以及内裤脱下来，然后露出他的生殖器。
午休时间他的餐碗没有收拾，那班导就走过来发现，那一气之下就挥手打我女儿的背，那造成说我女儿就往前扑倒，去撞到这个固定在那个墙边的桌子。
The breaking point came in April when parents at the kindergarten asking for a refund happened to see inappropriate discipline in action and blew the whistle. The school faces a fine of nearly $2,000 and more.
接获通报第一时间立即处理，同时解除幼儿园总公共资格，并勒令停招。
3 teachers accused of abuse face fines of up to $18,000, and 1 teacher has been barred from the profession for life. But while this case is being resolved, it's not an isolated one. Taiwan is still in shock over the case of a nanny accused of killing an infant in her care late last year. There were also accusations last week that a Taipei kindergarten teacher molested 20 students. The months in between have seen a string of less publicized cases across the country. And while some NGOs suggest better training for teachers, officials also face demands to increase school inspections to catch abuse early on. Justin Wu and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan's public servants are set to receive a pay hike in 2025. Premier Zhou Rongtai says civil servants, military personnel, and public school teachers will get a 3% raise next year. It's the second year in a row they've gotten a pay hike. The government says Taiwan's economy has done well and public servants should benefit. The premier also urged private companies to raise wages to boost the country's competitiveness. Marine biologists are installing floating coral nurseries in the Mediterranean. It's part of a project to restore native populations of an endangered coral species hit by climate change. Wesley Lewis takes a look.
These submerged nets off the coast of Cyprus are part of a coral conservation project. At just 5 meters below the surface, they're floating nurseries. Marine biologists glue small coral fragments to pins and secure them to the nets. The corals then spend a few weeks here before being transferred to a natural reef. This project is part of a pilot study to restore the local coral population.
We're going to deploy floating nurseries within 2 marine protected areas in Cyprus so that we can test whether it's working for the corals to be restored, to be nursed first, so that we can try to restore the communities that have been declining in recent years.
The native species of coral once thrived in the waters off the southeast coast of Cyprus, but now it's endangered. Conservationists plan to install over 100 coral fragments on these floating nurseries and observe how they acclimatize.
And then in a year's time, we will know basically if the corals are doing well on the nurseries or not. Hopefully they will be doing well. And then after that, we will collect the coral fragments and transplant them on natural reefs, on natural rocks.
Unsustainable human activity continues to be one of the main threats to this species. Conservationists say keeping young coral away from the shoreline offers them much-needed protection to grow.
We exclude the impact from tourism because this specific species, Clavogara gaspitosa, in Cyprus they're found in very shallow areas where tourists potentially can trample on them, can step on them.
Rising ocean temperatures also pose a threat. Biologists warn the coral population in the Mediterranean could decline by up to 80% within the next century, which would threaten the wider shallow water ecosystem.
I would like the future generations to be able to enjoy not just this species in particular, but the natural environment. And this is a key part, this is a key species to be able to support the rest of the biodiversity.
The researchers here are keeping a close eye on these nurseries, with the hope that the coral will grow strong enough to be introduced back to the seabed. Klein Wang and Wesley Lewis for TaiwanPlus.
Fans of wine and scuba diving, listen up. You can now test the depths of your love for the vine with a new diving activity. A business in Tainan is letting people dive for bottles of wine stored 20 meters down on the sea floor. Experts say that the environment there can speed up the wine's aging and produce a much smoother taste. Thank you for watching What's Up Taiwan. You can visit the TaiwanPlus website or follow our social media for more of our stories. Finally, let's take a look at the longest rowing boat in the world at the Paris Olympic Torch Relay. I'm Joyce. Take care and see you next time.
For more stories from Taiwan and around the world, download the TaiwanPlus app.